Hi everyone, I'm Maurice. I'm the artistic director from MUTEK Japan Association. Joining today this panel on new perspectives for news stories, digitization of cultural events organized by the HACNUM network and the Chronics Digital Biennale. I'm the artistic director for MUTEK Japan since we founded the festival in 2016 in Tokyo. But MUTEK originally comes from Montreal, where it has been for 21 years, working at the intersection of art, science, and technology. So I personally have been in Japan for 8 or 9 years by now. Worked as a consultant before we started the festival, but I've always been involved in the event and art scene in Tokyo. So the topic of this discussion is introducing new strategies in this kind of post-pandemic world for cultural events. So cultural events and the art and culture industries as a whole have been very hard hit by the pandemic, as all of us know. And it was quite challenging for me personally because I wasn't able to return to Japan for almost 10 months. I left Japan in February. I was just supposed to travel to Canada for a project, then visit my family, and then I was supposed to come back to Japan end of March, but the borders were closing. So my introduction is going to be part personal story and part MUTEK Japan developments this year. So yeah, being stuck in Europe, of course, we went into lockdown in the summer. At the same time, Japan was closing its borders and going into a soft kind of lockdown itself. We have to say that Japan was never as hard hit as Europe in general. There might be different reasons for that that I don't have time to go into now. So I was stuck in Germany, and luckily our festival is in December, so we really were like in no rush to push anything through. Of course, all our events that we were planning for the summer that we usually do, like workshops, like small audiovisual activations and these kind of things, they kind of got pushed back indefinitely. So it was a little bit challenging, but at the same time, because the festival is in December, it wasn't that pushing that we really had to do something now. We didn't really have to cancel our festival. We didn't have to like rush to change our festival content in a very short time and develop something new. So we really had time to wait and see what's going to happen. And especially in these first weeks of the pandemic, it felt that a lot of people were just rushing to do something. Maybe there was a little bit over-eagerness in there that came from not knowing how long this will actually take. And some people might have like shot away all the ammunition like very, very soon. But we had the chance to wait and see a little bit what's going to happen. So the first thing that happened within the MUTEK network was MUTEK San Francisco. MUTEK San Francisco usually annually takes place beginning of May. This year as well, but San Francisco was very quick to adapt to the virtual world, and within like 2 or 3 weeks of organizing the festival, they were able to create an experimental virtual platform that I'm going to show a video of now. So as you can see, we have kind of like a virtual venue. We have the 4 different stages: the patio, the Gods and Monsters, the workshop, and the screening room. Patio being more laid-back music, the workshops being more conferences, Gods and Monsters kind of being the main stage, and then the screening room where we're just running movies. We're collaborating with a film festival in San Francisco. So you can see you have the artist profiles, you can enter shows directly, you can donate, you can learn more about the experience. We had a chat room. And you could see some performances here as well. One important thing here really was that this all was really a group effort of volunteers, of the coders, of the development team from Currents FM, of the MUTEK San Francisco team, of the MUTEK International team, who all kind of tried to provide content. The Japan side, for example, provided performance by Daito Manabe and Satoshi Hori, performance which they adapted from originally performing it at MUTEK Japan 2 years ago. I think they adapted it to the virtual world, which was really nice to see. And it was really an effort that was not compensated really. So the idea was that donations are being made and all the donations are being split equally between everyone. What we see here is one of the community streams. So that was an idea that we're not continuing anymore because it was a little challenging, but the idea was that basically anyone that is part of the community could submit a stream and it would be played as a community stream in the platform. So basically making it a very participatory idea. Right now we're not following that idea anymore, but that doesn't mean it's been completely shelved. I personally think it's a great idea, a great approach. The problem, however, was at the time that it was not well, like we didn't have the capacity to proper curate it. So anyone could submit a stream, and there was like a short pre-selection in terms of like no offensive content and these things, but there wasn't really like a proper curation and in the community streams. But with some effort, I think that's an idea that could be continued in the future, developing the community streams and actually getting in touch with collectives, with certain promoters from the different cities to kind of provide their curated content in there. An idea that definitely is worth thinking about in the future. So here we are going into the workshop. We had some conferences. Here we had some, I believe it was live coding. Exactly, it was a live coding workshop. You could interact with the people holding the workshop directly in the chat room. The chat room was only available to people that actually donated. So we wanted to give some perks to the ones that did donate. One important thing that we really learned from this is, one question is the time zone difference. So MUTEK San Francisco did 2 times 8 hours on Saturday, Sunday, but to San Francisco time. So that was actually in the middle of the night for European times. So I was in Europe at the time, and it was kind of hard to follow the festival. So how do you curate a festival that has a fixed schedule, that is not on demand, in a way that several people from several places in the world can actually enjoy the festival properly? So that was one big challenge that we also addressed in Montreal, with the idea of having replays from different time zones of the different shows. Then the other question was the curation, which kind of goes hand in hand with the schedule. But the question is the idea of selected shows that will work in the virtual world, which gets even more complicated to have shows that work in the virtual world and in the physical world, which is a topic we get to later. But also the kind of idea of what kind of experiences are actually enjoyable in this format. One problem, for example, was I got up at 8 a.m. in the morning and the Gods in Rooms was playing pounding techno. It was hard to kind of deal with that, which also is in connection with the time zone difference. But yeah, it's important to think about the different ways that people might experience the festival, also in connection with like the different kind of technological foundations that different people have. So some people might watch it on a like flat screen TV with like a good sound system. Other content might work there than someone just watching it on their earphones, on their smartphone or on their iPad. So compared to the normal festival, we actually have less control over the environment that people are gonna experience the festival. So that's actually quite a challenge to curate something. Of course, you can give advice and say, okay, this is best experienced in this kind of format, but in the end, you don't have the real control about the format that people are watching it in. And that's a big challenge that people need to keep in mind, that it might not be right for any kind of device. The other question is really the kind of environment that people are going to watch it in. So is it going to be a streaming watch party with my friends, for example, or is it going to be people in hard lockdown, for example, right now, that are sitting on their couch with their loved ones and just like do it quiet? Seeing the developments recently, there has been a lot of like producers of electronic music, for example, that usually produce banging techno or whatever, that really went into the ambient side of things because it just fit the situation more, but it also fit the way that people consume the experience right now better. So here you see the first trial at the virtual gallery with actually some interactive content that you could experience to the San Francisco edition. We had a few learnings from this first experiment in San Francisco, which I just outlined before. All of this brought us back to the drawing table, and MUTEK Montreal had its 21st edition in September. Usually it was in end of August, but in Canada there was actually a ban on doing physical events until the end of August. So the MUTEK team in Montreal decided to move the festival 2 weeks later to a date where at the time it was confirmed that physical events could happen, even though in a limited format. So that's when the hybrid format of the festival actually started. So there were several discussions going on based on the previous experience, but we came to the conclusion that while the effort together with the Currents FM team was great, we would rather prefer to develop our own independent platform, especially looking that we have a whole network of cities that are running festivals from Montreal to San Francisco, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, Barcelona, Japan, and our satellite edition in Dubai as well. It made a lot of sense to kind of join the efforts and develop something custom made. That was one part. And the second part that was important for the Montreal edition is that Montreal always has the festival, but also the forum integrated. So a professional conference around digital creativity. So that was the second part that made this effort a little bit different. So I just gonna show you another screen share from the Montreal edition. So we built this completely custom-made platform with developers called Folklore and Akfen Agency in Montreal. You can see we have 6 different stages, basically. 3 stages where there's performance program, then we have the gallery, where there's a virtual gallery showcasing digital artworks, VR works, AI works. We have the auditorium that used MUTEK forum selection, which means that we selected specific talks from the forum itself. The forum was actually held on a different platform, which was called Swapcard, which is a professional networking tool specifically made for conferences. So here we only showcased a selection of the talks that were happening on Swapcard. So this was the performance platform. So you could see it kind of resembles the MUTEK San Francisco platform. There's definitely a lot of inspiration going on there with the chat, with the info boxes, but it's all really custom made for the MUTEK experience. So here you can see one of the performances. We had the gallery, the auditorium, and the listening room, where we played a selection of tracks from the MUTEK network. At the same time that we had this virtual festival experience, because it's a hybrid edition, we also had physical events in Montreal in various venues around the city that were streamed onto this platform, but also there were audiences in the physical space that could see the performances live in the venues. For example, at the Society of Arts and Technology in Montreal. So here you can just see a few more gimmicks that we built, the kind of countdown to the next show. Now we're going to stage number 3, where we had a multicam kind of experience where you could watch the shows from different angles, which was also an interesting experiment. Something that we didn't continue for the Japan edition, but it might be something that we want to do again in the future, so people can kind of create their own experience with the different angles. So another big learning here was how to develop kind of the audience journey. Let's get back to the gallery for 1 second. You can see this was the Distant Arcades exhibition of digital artworks. You could flip through like in a catalog almost, and then there were a lot of video works this time around, because we didn't have the time to implement interactive works or web VR works this time around, but it gave a very nice addition to the platform, especially like in between shows. We really didn't want people to leave the festival experience. It's already hard enough to grab people's attention once, but once they leave, it's really hard to get them back as well. So we wanted to provide this experience where people could explore the platform, and even if there's like no show, an intermission or something going on, people could go into the gallery. Also, the gallery was always online, so the shows were always scheduled. They were running at certain times according to 3 time zones: Europe, Montreal, and Japan. And the gallery and also the form selection were pieces of content where people could just dive in and just explore them at any time. So it has, on one hand, you have the freedom to explore certain parts of the content. On the other hand, you have the pre-curated kind of content, the pre-curated stages that you would also have at a festival. So that was an interesting exploration in that direction. So after this Montreal edition was done, we got back to the drawing board, and the idea came up to join the festivals in Mexico and in Japan, because they're usually very close together, usually about a month. This year would have actually only been 2 weeks apart from each other. So as the major part of the festival, or the 2 festivals, would happen online anyways, the idea quickly came up that we should just join the 2 festival editions in order to kind of maximize the impact, but also maximize the use of resources, especially if we would all be using the same virtual platform. Doing something 2 weeks after each other didn't make a lot of sense on that part, and that's where the idea for connecting the 2 cities, Mexico City and Tokyo, through the virtual world came up. So we just concluded the festival past Sunday. Actually, the archives are still going to be up until January 1st. We made a few improvements to the platform and a few major developments. What we wanted to try this time is to actually start developing a business model with the platform that could actually start sustaining itself. So we implemented a paywall onto the virtual platform. Unfortunately, I don't have a video recorded of the platform, how it was looking in the Japan and Mexico edition. But we implemented a paywall. We required a mandatory payment of $10 to enter the platform. It's kind of a middle way between, because we wanted to keep it affordable for people from around the world. So $10 was kind of the middle ground that we came up with between Mexico and Japan and the rest of the world. But yeah, it was a first experiment to see if people would pay for content, especially in times where there's so much free content out there. We also wanted to renew an appreciation for the arts and music, especially in times of streaming a lot of content for very little money per month, to kind of recreate that appreciation that there's a lot of work going into the content creation, and that this is more than just like a Spotify or Netflix subscription, but it actually goes directly to the people that are creating the content. So of course, it also goes to the festival, but the festival is basically the platform for the people to create and showcase their work, and that's what it has always been since Montreal started, and that's what it's always going to be about. So that was one major development. Then of course the other part was that we had two creative scenes connecting together. So we had 10 performances from Mexico City, 12 performances from Tokyo. Unfortunately, the performances in Mexico City were not able to take place in front of an audience. In Tokyo, we had the chance to make it take place in front of an audience, even though it was limited to 150 people, so about 1/4 of what we're used to. The idea here was the hybrid approach kind of developed from the Montreal edition into something more than originally envisioned. So when we were thinking about hybrid, it wasn't about the hybrid like a hybrid car where you have like a gas engine and you have an electric engine and you kind of try to make a compromise between both, and nothing's really like the best. We really wanted to transcend this hybrid idea of compromises and really think of hybridity as creating something new, like taking two creative scenes, taking two cities, put them together, and not just be like, okay, he's the best artist from this scene and he's the best artist from this scene and they're just performing at the same time, but really create an immersive experience that transcends these creative scenes and creates something new. That was the whole idea about this hybrid format. So it's hard to say what the result is right now. Like overall, we're personally quite satisfied with especially the quality of the performances that were delivered. Of course, there were also a lot of learnings on what kind of performances work, both in the physical space and in the virtual space. There are also questions of curation in the future. Okay, do we really want to stream all the performances in the virtual space, from the physical space to the virtual, or do we want to keep like special moments, special things for each experience? So for example, on Saturday evening, we had Neutral, which is like a beat project by Aoki Takamasa and Fumitake Tamura. And at the very end of the performance, like people for the first time in 3 days actually stood up and started to like wiggle around a little bit. And that was a very special kind of moment that you had to be there to experience this kind of letting loose a little bit of the tension that was there for the last couple of months, because it was kind of the first event for a lot of people since the pandemic started. So that was something special. And then also some performances that really worked in the virtual space, that were like super impactful in the virtual space, that were recorded in the physical, but in the physical maybe it wasn't as impactful because you had a different perspective. So we had a performance with Tesla coils, for example. So if you were in the venue, it was actually quite hard to see the electricity flowing because it was quite like small streams and it was a little bit far away if you were in the back of the room, but it worked beautifully in the virtual world. Like it was made for the virtual world. If you were able to see like close-ups of the Tesla coil shooting the electricity, it was really good. So these are kind of the learnings that came from this, and something that we will take into the future. Now we kind of established the modus operandi for how to do a hybrid event, Like we have the platform, we have the technology, we have the experience of streaming, of creating a virtual gallery. We even created a VR space in Altspace VR for this edition as well. So the experience on how to use these different technologies is really something that I believe this year really was about. Like it was not really about finding the best solution on how to create the best content or curate the best content. That will be the next step. But this year was really about creating the fundamentals of doing a hybrid event that is kind of transcending the different forms of physical and virtual and augmented and all these kind of different realities that are there. That was really what this year was about. And the next year will be about making use of the experience of using that technology and working on the content side of things. Not saying that the content was bad, not at all. Like we're super happy with the content that we delivered, but learning how to present the right content in the right way, to give the right experience, to give impactful experiences. That is really what 2021 is going to be about. As we believe this kind of hybrid format will stay and it will actually become more and it will develop. The past year actually accelerated the development of these hybrid formats tremendously. If it wouldn't be for the pandemic, I think we would have lagged a few years behind in creating these hybrid spaces. Like people would have experimented, but not on the level that people are experimenting right now, because they actually have the space to do so, because there's not much else to do at the moment. So that being said, I just want to leave you with a short piece of one of the performances that we did with Altar, which is a humanoid robot, which was the opening performance of this year's edition.